Hello. Um, Today, let's again jump into the free code camp exercise. So last time we discussed a web design certification, the first step of the web design certification, which was understanding the basics of HTML. Now we can begin with the next step, which is within responsive web design certification for FreeCodeCamp. We completed the HTML part. Uh, if we can recollect, just to do a quick recap, we built a cat photo app. It was purely HTML driven. And now what we can do is we can move to the next step, which is basics of CSS by building a cafe menu. Okay, so here is a preview of what we need to build. Some cafe. One section is coffee with list of items. Then there is dessert, list of items. And then there is a footer and an address. And then there is also a title, or let's say like an H1. Okay, so let's begin. Step one, as you learned in the last few steps of the cat photo app, yeah, there is a basic structure needed to start building your web page. Yep, that's true. So let's start with doc type HTML, and then let's have an HTML tag, HTML element with language is equals to English. And I believe this HTML will be closed as well. Perfect. Everything works. Let's go to the next one. Let's add a head element within the HTML element. So HTML, I'll just put an indentation, head. I'll close the head with on another line. And then within the head element, let's add a title element and also close the title first. The title element's text should be cafe menu. Okay, so cafe menu. Just to keep things simple, let me just bring it on the same line. Perfect, this works. Next step, the title is one of the several elements that provides extra information which is not visible on the web page. Yeah. In the last session, we discussed something called as a meta element, which had multiple attributes. One of those was char set. So let's add a meta element, and char set attribute is equals to UTF-8. And meta elements are self-closing, so there is no need of the forward parentheses here. So let's check the code. And so far, as you can see, there's nothing on the preview section. Okay, to prepare to create some actual content, let's create a body element. So body element would be outside the head element. Let's close it with a forward slash. Okay, so we have created the body element. Next step is let's add some menu content. So add a main element within the existing body element. It will eventually contain pricing information about coffee and desserts ordered by the cafe. Okay, so here we have the main element. Let's actually check what is the purpose of main element in HTML. The main tag specifies the main content of a document. The content inside the main element should be unique to the document. It should not contain any content that is repeated across documents such as sidebars, navigation links, copyright information. Okay. It is essentially for structure. It is related to a particular topic within the body of the HTML, central topic of the page or the application. So basically the main content of the HTML page. I would see this as more or less like a structure. I would assume that if I do not include the main element, I probably will not see any harm in the web page. It would still publish. I can see everything, like all of the H1 tags, paragraphs, and so on. Cool. So this works. The name of the cafe is Camper Cafe. Add an H1 element. Okay. So H1 element, Camper Cafe. H1 element close. And now we have the content, Camper Cafe. And again, this is just the HTML structure. We have not even begun with the CSS styling. So HTML is probably all about laying the skeleton, and CSS is all about beautifying it. Okay, to let visitors know the cafe was founded in 2020, let's add a paragraph element. Paragraph element estimated established 2020, paragraph close. This works. Next step, there will be two sections on the menu, one for coffees and one for desserts. So let's add a section element. And this one would be for coffees. Now within the section element, we create an H2 tag and it's for coffee. I assume that we will do something similar and create another section for desserts. Up until now, you have been limited regarding the presentation and appearance of the content you create. Yes. To start taking control, add a style element within the head element. Add a style element within the head element. So somewhere here, okay, I'm assuming that style needs a closing tag as well. Let's check. So if I enter style and do not close it, everything disappears from here, which means that it needs a closing tag. And as soon as I have a closing tag, everything appears back. Okay. You can add style to an element by specifying it in the style element and setting a property for it like this. Okay. So center your H1 element by setting its text align property to the value center. Got it. So something like element is H1, and then we have curly braces. Property is text align here, colon, value is center. And then there is a semicolon to close this. Yeah, so now the camper cafe has been center aligned. Cool. Interesting. In the previous step, you used a type selector to style the H1 element. Okay. Center the H2 and P elements by adding a new type selector for each one to the existing style element. What does that mean? Do I have to just copy? Yeah. Coffee is also now centered. Let's check if I can put a comma. Oh, okay. So this is also working. So I think the optimal way of actually doing this would be something like this instead of adding new lines of code. Okay. Oh, so I should not be changing the existing H1 selector. Got it. This means that, let's try this. Okay, you should not add a new H2 selector as well. New type selector. Yeah, I think we have done that, but again, this is not optimal. Maybe in the next steps, yeah, in the next steps, it asks us to optimize. So instead of doing like an H1, H2, and paragraph in 3 different type selectors, we can optimize things. Cool. You have styled 3 elements by writing CSS inside the style tags. Yep. This works, but since there will be many more styles, it is best to put all the styles in a separate file and link to it. So instead of increasing the length of the existing code, it's just probably better to structure things and create new files. One file for HTML and one file for CSS. So we have created a separate CSS file for you and switched the editor view to that file. You can change between files with the tabs at the top of the editor. Okay, so this is HTML, responsive web design, and this is the CSS part of it. Start by writing the styles you have created into the styles.css file. Make sure to exclude the opening and closing style tags. Okay. Should I do it? No. Okay, it's not right. This is the comma one. So we need to redo this. So this one. Okay. So instead of style tags, I need to just do this text align. Okay. Now that you have CSS, go ahead and remove the style element and all its content. When it is removed, the text that was center will shift back to the left. Oh, it did. I did not remove the closing style tag. Now I need to link the CSS file. Yep. So for that, nest a self-closing link element in the head element. So link, give it a rel attribute, value style sheet, and href is equals to styles.css. Okay, it's now again centered. For the styling of the page to look similar on mobile as it does on a desktop or a laptop, which is essentially called as responsive web design, we need a meta element with a special content attribute. Okay, so we have a meta element. We need a content attribute which says, oh, the whole thing. We need the whole. So name is equal to viewport, content is equal to width is equal to device width, initial scale is 1.0. So this is self-explanatory that the width of the website should be equal to the device width, and probably the scale is 100%, 1.0. 100% of the total device width is considered as the width of the website. Not sure about viewport. Do I need a new meta element? Most likely not. Interesting. Why do I need a different meta element for char set and different meta element for content with device width? The viewport meta tag is used to control the layout of a web page. Yes. For example, setting the viewport to this makes the page match the width of the device. Yes. The char set meta tag is used to specify the character encoding. Hmm. Let's see. Actually, there is content and char set in the same line. I would assume that they should be in the same line, but let's figure it out as we move forward. Okay, the text is centered again. So the link is working. Yep. Add another style to the file that changes the background color property to brown for the body element. So body, background color brown. Oh, nice. Change is definitely visible. So change the body element's background color to burly wood. Okay. The text is readable. The div element is used mainly for design layout purposes, unlike the other content elements you have used so far. Okay, so design layout. Add a div element inside the body element and then move all the other elements inside the new div. Okay, so let's add an div element inside the body element and then move all of the other elements inside the new div. And also make an indentation here just to keep things clear. Inside the opening div tag, add an ID attribute with the value menu. Okay, so this is the total menu div. Yeah, I think it's all about ensuring that we are creating sections within the website, and then for those sections, you can create different designs. That is essentially the purpose of the div. The goal now is to make the div not take up the entire width of the page. Okay, the CSS width property is perfect for this. You can use the ID selector to target a specific element with an ID attribute. Yep. An ID selector is defined by placing the hash symbol directly in front of the element's ID value. For example, if an element has the ID of cat, then you would target that element like this. Hashtag cat width. Okay. So instead of body, let's do menu. So background color is not for the whole menu. Yeah, I think background color is for the whole web page, but for the specific div, we are talking about a width of 300 pixels. Okay. Works. Comments work in this fashion. Now using the menu selector, we set the background color of the div element, yep, to burly wood. So as we can see, the whole background color of the web page is gone. And we are specifying the background color of the div only to burly wood. Yeah. Now it's easy to see that the text is centered inside the hashtag menu element. So the text is definitely centered inside the div. Currently the width of the menu element is specified in pixels. Yep. But again, since it is in pixels, in responsive web design, it would keep on staying as 300 pixels regardless of the width of the device. So to make it flexible, we can possibly do like a percentage width so that it responds as 80% of the device width, and the device width can keep on changing. So now if I, let's say, decrease the device width, we can see that it's constant. The the div width is flexible as we keep on increasing the width of the screen, which is pretty cool. But I think this will not happen in the case of setting it up as 300 pixels. So now let me reduce the width. So this stays constant, and now it fit the whole preview screen. Now let's say I increase the width, increasing, and now as 300 pixels is constant, it's not really helping much in the case of responsive web design, or let's say dynamic screen width. So yeah, this makes a ton of sense that it should be relative. Okay, next, you want to center the menu horizontally. You can do this by setting its margin left and margin right properties to auto. Think of, yeah, so now since this menu is aligned to the left, it's not, the whole div is not aligned to the center. We want to take this whole div and keep it in the center. And that is why we can add margin left auto, margin right auto. And now it's in the center. There is equal margin gaps provided to this div element so that the whole content, the div, is essentially in the center. So far, you have been using type and ID selectors. Yes, so the type was essentially H1, body, paragraph, H2, so on. And ID is hashtag something. Hashtag menu was the ID selector. However, it is more common to use a different selector to style your elements. A class selector is defined by a name with a dot directly in front of it like this. Okay. So dot class name. Change the existing menu selector into a class selector by, okay, so instead of doing like a hash menu, we do dot menu. But why did the background color move away? Let's see. To apply the class styling to the div element, remove the ID attribute and just call it. Okay. So instead of ID, it should be class. And once you make it class, the background color is back. Perfect. Since the cafe's main product for sale is coffee, you could use an image of coffee beans for the background. Okay. So instead of background color, let's use background image and set its value to URL parentheses this. All right, so the whole web page now has a background image. Okay, so I also need to delete the comment. And I also need to add a semicolon. It's looking good. Time to start adding some menu items. Add an empty article element under the coffee heading. Okay. article element. It will contain a flavor and price of each coffee you currently offer. Purpose of article element in HTML. Okay, it's just a section that forms an independent part of a document or site. What is the difference between article versus section element? The article element specifies independent self-contained content. The section element defines section in a document. Okay, what is the difference? Articles can have sections, but sections cannot have articles. Okay. Like how books can have chapters, but chapters cannot have books. Fair enough. Okay. Step 30. Um, the article elements commonly contain multiple elements that have related information. Okay. In this case, it will contain a coffee flavor and the price of that flavor. Next two paragraph elements. Paragraph elements. The first one should be French vanilla. The second text should be 3.00. Starting below the existing coffee price pair, add the following coffee and prices using article elements. Nested P elements within each. Okay, so need to caramel macchiato, hazelnut mocha, hazelnut mocha, 3.5, 4, and 4.5. 3.5, 4, and 4.5. Oh, 4 and 4.5. And this is redundant. So French vanilla 3, caramel macchiato 3.5, hazelnut 4, and mocha 4.5. All right. Okay, the article should have 5 elements. Oh, there's also pumpkin spice. Ah, caramel macchiato is 3.75. Spice 3.5, hazelnut 4, mocha 4.5, and then there's also French vanilla 3. Okay, great. The flavors and spices are currently stacked on top of each other. Yep. So they are below one another. Ideally should be left and right. On the left, there should be, let's say, French vanilla or the item name, and on the right, there should be price. So the flavors and prices are currently stacked on top of each other and centered with their respective P elements. It would be nice if the flavor was on the left and the price was on the right. Mhm. Add the class name flavor to the French vanilla paragraph element. So flavor, oh, I think it was class. Using your new flavor class as a selector, set the text align property value to left. Oh, okay, now French vanilla is on the left. Now you want to align the price to the right. So let's add a class price. And then for the price selector, text align should be right. So this is sort of what we want, but they are not on the same line. So paragraph elements are block level elements. So they take up the entire width of the parent element. To get them on the same line, you need to apply some styling to the paragraph elements so that they behave more like inline elements so that they come on the same line. To do that, start by adding a class attribute with the value item to the first article. Okay. So class attribute value should be item to the first article element under the coffee heading. So this one, class is equal to item. Done. Now the item element should be handled in some way. The paragraph elements are nested in the article element with the class attribute item. You can style all of the paragraph elements nested anywhere in the elements with a class named item like this. Oh, so of the class item, we are styling only the paragraphs. Display property inline block. Display inline block. Now it's on the same line. But again, the gap has decreased. Let's see what can we do there. That's closer, but the price didn't say over on the right. Yes. This is because inline block elements only take up the width of their content. To spread them out, add a width property to the flavor and price. So width property to flavor and price, and it should be 50% each. Okay, flavor and price, it should be 50% each, but then why did it move to the next line? Let's see. Well, that did not work. Yeah. Styling the paragraph elements as inline block and placing them on separate lines in the code creates an extra space to the right of the first paragraph element, causing the, maybe we could inspect it. Okay. So there is this orange div that's created around French vanilla. And again, there is an orange div that's created around price. We want to remove that. Mm-hmm. Okay. So styling the paragraph elements as inline block and placing them on separate lines in the code creates an extra space to the right of the first paragraph element, causing the second one to shift on the second line. Okay. One way to fix this is to make each paragraph element width less than 50%. So probably just making it 49 for each class so that it's not pushed to the next line. Got it. Probably let's check. Yeah, so there is obviously some space created. But there's still space on the right of the price. Yes, there is. You could try, you could keep trying various percentages for the widths. Instead, use the backspace key on your keyboard to move the paragraph element with the class to move with the class price next to the paragraph element with the class flavor so that they are on the same line in the editor. Make sure there's no space between them. Oh, interesting. Something like this. That's done. There was a change. Yeah, slightly moved to the left. Oops. Okay, so now maybe we could do width is equal to 50%. Yeah, 50% and 50%. Now it is totally stuck to the right. Perfect. Now that you know it works, you can change the remaining article and paragraph elements to match the first set. Okay, so here we had class is equal to item for the first article, same thing for the second article, same thing for the third article, and for one more. Then for paragraph, I think the class was flavor. So pumpkin spice, same thing for hazelnut, and the same for mocha. And for this, the price class is equals to price. So class is equal to price. Hmm. Okay, start by adding the class item to the other article element. So did I do? Let's see. Yeah, it does pass. Now position the other paragraph elements to be on the same line with no space between them. Yeah, I think this was a prerequisite. I think I should probably go back to my previous step. Now, since I've changed the last step, no space between paragraphs. Yep. flavor and price. Okay. Class is equals to flavor. It's done. Now class is equal to price. It's what we need. Okay, works well for all of the items. Um, let's check how far along are we. Okay, so we are at step number 45. Um, we are at step number 45. Okay. Let's check how far along are we. Okay, so there are 91 steps. So let's probably cover like a few more steps and end this video as part one, because the video might get too long. And then we can introduce a part two, so wherein we cover all of the remaining parts to build up this cafe menu. Okay. Oh, do I have to do this again? I hope not. Cool. So if next step is, if you make the width of the page preview smaller, you will notice at some point, some of the text on the left starts wrapping around to the next line. This is because the width of the paragraph element on the left side can only take up 50% of the space. Okay, let's check. We are reducing the width. Okay, so now caramel macchiato, it's moved on a different line, which is obviously not the right experience uh, a user would want. So since you know the prices on the right have significantly fewer characters, change the flavor class to have like a width of 75% and this to have a width of 25%. Okay, now maybe let's check doing this again. Yeah, now caramel macchiato does not move to the next line, which is cool. Now, step number 46, you will come back to styling the menu in a few steps. Okay. But for now, let's go ahead and add a second section element below the first for displaying the desserts offered by the cafe. So let's add a section and a closing tag for the section element. And the process would be similar. Let's add an H2, call it desserts, close the H2. And then add an empty article under the deserts heading. Give it a class attribute of with the value item. Nest two paragraph elements and call them. So the first thing should be donut and the second one should be price 1.50, and also make sure that there is no space between them. For the two paragraph elements, add desert as the value. Okay, so class is equal to desert. Second, let's do value price as the second class attribute. So class is equals to price. Works. CSS rule for the flavor already sets. For now, we need to add the, okay, no, something does not look right. Yeah. You added the correct class attribute to the paragraph element with donut as its text, but you have not defined a selector for it. Yeah. Because the previous class for French vanilla was flavor. So everything here on the left was class is equal to flavor. Now we have class is equal to desert. So we might want to set up something for desert. And here text align should be exactly the same. So now it works. Oh, so add the desert class as an additional selector. So probably something like this instead of adding new lines of code. Yeah. Below the desert, you just add the rest of the deserts and price using three more article elements, each with two nested paragraph elements. So let's just copy paste. Cherry pie 2.75. Cherry pie 2.75. Cheesecake 3.0. Cinnamon roll 2.5. Works. Now you can give your menu some space between the content and the sides with various padding properties. So between the content and the sides, yeah. So there's no space. So give the menu class a padding left and a padding right with same value of 20 pixels. So let's do that. Padding left, 20 pixels. Padding right is also 20 pixels. Okay, so now there is some space from the edge of the menu to the content. That looks better. Now try to add the same 20% padding to the top and bottom. Okay. Padding top, 20 pixels. Padding bottom, 20 pixels. Okay, so now there is also space on the top and bottom. Since all of the four sides have the same, go ahead and delete the four properties and use a single padding property. Okay, so something pretty generic. The current width of the menu will always take up 80% of the body element's width, right? Yeah, that's true. So it takes up 80% on a very wide screen. The coffee and dessert appear far apart from the prices. All right, so let me increase the screen width to max here. Yeah, so the French vanilla is very, very far apart from the price. So add a max width property to the menu class with a value of 500 pixels to prevent it from growing it too wide. Got it. So the menu should not grow too wide, even though the device width is getting too big. So I think that's the intention here. Um, let's add max width 500 pixels. Now let's check. Hmm. Is it still not too far? Maybe I have to. Okay, yeah, it's not. So now I have reduced the side of the coding panel, and now it's not increasing beyond a certain width, which is good. Let's actually remove this for a while and I check the same behavior. Okay, so it's growing and growing. Okay, it's getting abnormally wide. It's not really helpful. Max width, and now everything is under control. Great. All right. I'll take a pause here, and we can start with the with part two of the same effort to actually build up a cafe menu, design it well using HTML and CSS, and complete this exercise on FreeCodeCamp. But for now, do practice along. This really seems interesting. It's quite fun to actually see the changes that you are making and actually see the changes live, which is pretty cool. And we can start exploring the next. We can start exploring in the next session as to how this whole menu would turn out in the end. Until then, thank you so much. If you like the content, do subscribe, and see you next time.